am Kyle Roberts, so I know some of you I don't, but it's good to be back with y'all. Hey, Grant and Adrian, if y'all would pass out, I've got handouts for you. I just think it'd be a little bit easier. I've got a lot of material to cover, and sometimes it's just nicer to be able to look at something down on paper, and so I went ahead and brought that out. While they're doing that, just a little bit of background for those of you I don't know. I've been at Denton Bible since about 89. And then we've kind of moved all around. I'm a professor right now at Southern Methodist University. I teach statistics there. I know that's all your favorite class, right? It's the one that you're just like dying to sign up for. So I teach stats there and then also do research with a group called Children's Health at the Andrews Institute. And so we're doing research on childhood concussions. And so some pretty cool stuff, a lot of fun stuff around there. And then I also do a lot of sports research and things like that. Hey, you could just like hand them a pile and then pass it down, or you could hand one copy to each person as you go. Yeah, that would be great. And that way, if you're sick, you infect everyone. That's even better. Yeah, it's even better. That's good. Okay, and actually I was a professor at UNT a long time ago, back in 2001, so probably before many of y'all were born. And so it was a short stint here, and then, isn't that right? Most of y'all, that's before most of y'all were born, is that right? 2001, I was a professor at UNT, so that was a long time ago. Okay, I taught stats back then too, so I don't know, maybe I taught your parents, I don't know. Starting to get to that age where I'm starting to teach people's parents. I have 3 girls, so we live up north of town, in which I did give, we have a lot of land out, we have about 7 acres out north of town, and I did give Jake a hard time, like, y'all should go, we've got a gigantic swimming pool, and like all summer I was like, hey, you should bring college students out, they hang out, and we raise alpacas, and I've got one of the biggest dogs you've ever seen, and yeah, y'all never came out. So just like kick him in the knee next time you're out. And I'll cook for you too. So it'll be great. But anyway, y'all never came out, but that's okay. I've got 3 girls. Addison, some of y'all know, she is a pilot right now with Frontier. And so she's based out of Vegas. And so she's flying there. She's 23, about to be 23. She's 22, about to be 23. And then I've got Meg. She's a senior at Patrick Henry College. Anybody know Patrick Henry up in Virginia? Y'all heard of that? It's like the nerdiest place on the planet. Like she gets there and like, oh my goodness, her friends are such nerds. I mean, they're just straight up nerds. We were joking about though. It's a really small school. It's only 300 students, and we got there, and so I called my wife when she was interviewing at the school, and it was for her it was there in Rice. That's where she wanted to go, one of those 2 schools, and so she interviewed, and I go. Meredith goes, like, how's the school? And I go, I could throw a football across the campus. Like, I mean, all the way across. And then Meg goes, I could throw a football across the campus. Like, it's tiny, little bitty school. And then I've got Ella, who's a senior here in high school. And so she has no idea what she's going to do next year. Maybe the GAP program here. So she's been thinking about it. I know some of y'all have done GAP. Yes? Yeah. Yes. Some of you even lived with us. Yes? Yeah, hello. So we'll figure it out. And then I've been an elder here for the last 2 years, and then just enjoy. I love this place. I absolutely love this place. But we're going to talk about Daniel tonight. We're going to keep going. We're in Daniel 3. And I love this book. And I will say this, without a doubt, Daniel is the reason I'm a Christian. Without a doubt. This book is the reason I'm a Christian today. I mean, yes, I was poured into by a lot of people, but the reason that I work a full-time job and then teach the Bible 3 to 4 times a week on top of that is because of the book of Daniel. And here's why. Daniel, you're going to learn as Jake works through this, it's not a bunch of different prophecies that happened all over the place. What it is it's really one prophecy from like 4 different perspectives. Right? They're going to look at it from different angles, but it's all the same thing that it's talking about. It's like, what's going to happen today? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen a few years after that? What's going to happen a few years after that? And then what's going to happen at the end of time? Like what's going to happen on all those? And it's all these perspectives. And so you're going to get the pagan's perspective. You've already got Nebuchadnezzar, right? You already got that one. Okay, then you're going to get Daniel's perspective, right? That he's going to look at it. And then you're going to get a little hybrid thing with Nebuchadnezzar with this thing with the tree. It's really weird, all right? You'll get that probably next week. And then you'll get God's perspective, where God's going to look at this and he goes, look, you see this as this great statue, and I see this as complete abominations. right? And then you're going to find all this stuff out about like what's going to happen at the end time. And Daniel's going to lay it out so perfectly that it's all going to come true exactly like he says. In fact, so much so that he's going to name somebody before they're even born who they don't rise up until after Daniel is dead. And there's no way he could have known this guy's name. No way, right? And if you don't believe me, if you're like, oh, well, somebody went back afterwards and they fixed it. You can actually go to a place in Israel right now called the Shrine of the Book, and they have copies, original manuscripts of the book of Daniel that predate Jesus' birth by 200 years. Where Daniel said, not only will I tell you when he's coming, I'll tell you the day he's going to be here. And furthermore than that, I'll tell you the exact day, and you can count from this one spot, you can count this many days forward, and that's the day of the triumphal entry. And you can literally set your clock by, and it happens perfect. And nobody else can do that, right? Only God can do that. And that's why Tom said on Sunday, he goes, if you want a new religion, then just die and come back from the dead, and we'll all worship you, right? I say if you want a religion that is worthwhile to stand up to, prophesy for me. And then let's see what happens 30 years, 200 years, 700 years later. And if you're right, I'll take attention to that. But God just does it over and over and over. Over 300 prophecies just about Jesus, and most of them are in the book of Daniel. Like a bunch of them are in the book of Daniel. And they all came true exactly. Think about that. 483 years before something happens, you name it to the day that it's going to happen. That's something special, right? That's really something special. Okay, we're in chapter 3, though. And so what we're going to do, y'all made it through 18 last week, right? Say yes, because that's what Jake told me. All right, yes. Okay, y'all do. And if I gave you a quiz, you'd all remember what he talked about, right? And if you grew up with VeggieTales, we would call this the story of what? Rack, Shack, and Benny, right? And the bunny, right? Did any of y'all grow up with VeggieTales? Okay, yeah. One of the greatest stories ever. Yeah, that's the one that's worth it. Or the cheeseburger song. That's also a good one, right? So, but Rack, Shack, and Benny, that's the great one. That's the great one. Okay, so what happens? Nebuchadnezzar puts up this golden statue, and then he says, all right, you ought to bow down and worship, but you're going to hear the trumpets, and when the trumpet sound, you have to bow down and worship. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego go, no thanks, right? But did you notice last week how they did it? They weren't like, this is my time to take a stand. I'm going to be high. Everybody's going to know that no. Did you notice their attitude? How nice they were about it. They weren't like going out like, hey, this is tweetable. Get ready for this, right? I mean, that wasn't their attitude. Just tweets are even a thing anymore? No. Okay, it's something else. This is postable, right? They're not that way. Their attitude is more, no, we're just going to sit in quiet disobedience because we know this is not what we're supposed to do. And so their attitude is just as important as the action that they take. All right, but what I want you to do before we get in this passage, I want you to flip over to Revelation because from here forward, you're going to be doing this a lot. You're going to go Daniel, Revelation, Daniel, Revelation, Daniel, Revelation. You're going to do this a lot. So flip over to Revelation, and we're going to look, and I have it up here on the screen. We're going to look at Revelation 13. And this is going to start in verse 11. Okay. Now see if this looks familiar to what's going to just happen to to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego. Okay, listen to verse 13. Now chapter 13, verse 11. Now this is what's happening at the end. All right. He says, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He exercises all the authority on the first beast in his presence. Okay, the beast, you got multiple beasts here. You'll learn about that later. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And he performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who had the wound of the sword and who has come to life. All right, so there's a lot of beast stuff going on here. We'll get to the important part here in just a second. Well, actually, this is important too, but we'll get to the point I want to make. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and causes many who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So here's what he's saying. Does this sound familiar? Here's the image of the beast. If you don't worship it, kill him. Sound familiar? Right? This is Nebuchadnezzar part 2. Right? Okay. And he causes, verse 16, and he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, so that's that passage, the whole mark of the beast stuff. Okay, I don't want to talk about that, but here's what I do want to talk about. Notice what's happening. We've entered into a time where in order to trade, to buy food, to do anything on the earth, you have to acknowledge this beast. Okay, now what's happening at the time of Nebuchadnezzar and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego? Look, if you want to stay alive, you've got to just bow down just every time we blow the horn, right? That's all you have to do, bow down every time. And it's a moderately easy thing, right? I mean, if you're thinking about it, you know, with us as Christians, you might be thinking about this and going, it's easy to justify my way around this. To go, look, if I don't bow down, then I'm going to be killed, and I'm not going to be able to be a witness to those around me anymore. And so you may think, well, I'm probably justified in bowing down to that because I can't share my faith if I'm dead, right? I mean, it's really difficult to do, right? Yeah. And so what we start to do is we start to accommodate our problems. We start to go, you know what? I get it. Okay, I shouldn't be worshiping other gods, but man, this is going to be difficult. Like, how are we going to be able to be lights in the world if we're all dead, right? And this is the same thing that's going to happen at the very end. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego, they don't adopt this fashion. What they do is they say, no. The great Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You should worship the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that is the summation of things, right? This is what we're going to do. We're going to worship the Lord. Did I do that? No. Y'all did that, right? Okay, just making sure. All right. But that's what's going to happen. And then we start to justify the things that we do. Like, okay, like I remember a time when I never drunk a single drop of alcohol until I was 39, not one. And then I bought a bunch of Napa Auto Parts stores. You all know what Napa Auto Parts is? Okay, so I bought some Napa Auto Parts stores. And I begin to think about, all right, as I'm around these people, like all they do is drink. That's it. Like that's all they do. Like they sell auto parts and they drink. And my thought was, God, I want to be relevant to these guys. Like I want to be able to have a conversation, stuff like that with them. And so I told Meredith one day, I go, I'm going to learn how to drink. So I called my friend who's Christian, and he was like, hey, he didn't have a problem with drinking. And so I go like, I need you to teach me, like, what can I smell without throwing up? Because I smell a beer just drives me crazy. But I want to be relevant to these guys. And that's what I want to do. And so over the course of several months, I started to figure out, okay, this I can tolerate without throwing up, right? I mean, I hate the taste of it, absolutely hate it. And then after I had worked myself through that series, one time one of the guys came up to me and he goes, hey, what? I thought you were a Christian. And I go, I am. And he goes, well, wait, I thought you were like different than everybody else. I go, I am different than everybody else, don't you know? And he goes, no, you're behaving like everybody else around you does. Oh, man. Like, so the thing I was trying to do, thinking I was going to become more relevant, actually made me less relevant to him. Because to him, before that point, I was someone who stood apart and stood apart as different. And then after that, he goes, you're just like the rest of us, right? And oh, man, it stung. It absolutely stung. And I had a friend down in Houston who she was at nursing. You know y'all nursing majors? Yeah, this is a hard major. And there's always a point at the nursing majors, like they get, especially when you go to nursing, after undergrad, you go to nursing school, like it is hard. Like it's hard, right? And there's a point at which every one of them will, at some point, they'll just go, crisis of faith, like I'm dying, all I do is study, and is there going to be something more than this after this? And they always go through that, right? You're welcome, it's great major, you should do it, go ahead, don't worry about it, right? But anyway, so they go through this time, it's just really, really tough. And she said, I remember when we started nursing school, I didn't want to be that Christian that was like all up in your business about it. Like always, like, this is my faith, and I'm really bold about it, and I'm not going to go out with friends and things like that, and I'm going to stand apart. She goes, because there was this girl in our class that was that way. She was like oversaved. Y'all know what oversaved is? You know, like when somebody goes, Like, hey, have you seen the keys to my car? And she go, what you need is the keys to the kingdom. That's what you need. You don't need the keys to your car. Let's oversaved, right? So she was like that all the time. But then in nursing school, as happens, one by one, each one of the people in her nursing class, like they would just have a crisis. And she goes, and I noticed they all went to this oversaved girl. Not a one of them came to me. Not a one. Right? And why did they not? Because she was just like the rest of them. She wasn't set apart. She wasn't different. And she goes, and then I told myself from then on, like, that's it. I'm full bore. I'm full bore Christian because I thought I was being relevant. And I thought it was being relevant to the point of expediency. And that was the temptation that was before Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego, was this idea to be relevant in the midst of this. Like, yes, just bow down and think of how many, you've got all of Israel, like thousands upon thousands of people. You've got all of them out there, and all they're doing is they're bowing down. They're like, dude, just bow down. Otherwise, they're going to kill you. And then what good are you anymore? Like, no, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be set apart. Like, I'm going to be different. Right? Those three out of thousands of Israelites, thousands of them. Right? Those three, no, we're going to be different. We are. Oversaved, maybe. Yes. And then you've heard the phrase too, don't be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Have you heard that phrase? I've never met anybody like that. I've never met someone that's so concerned about the kingdom that they're no earthly good. Never met that person. Right? I've met obnoxious people, but I've never met someone whose mind is so focused on the things of the kingdom that they were no earthly good. Never met them. Right? And that's the challenge of what Daniel's trying to get into. Okay, that was the longest introduction to the passage that we're going to read ever, right? Okay, so let's go back to Daniel 3 and we'll get to the passage I want to talk about. Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, chapter 3. All right. So, if we get into 11, that's where we are. No, wait, y'all did 11 through 18 already, didn't you? Yes? Okay, we're in 19. Okay. All right. So, coming into this, and I'm going to skip a couple slides ahead because I'm already behind. And so sorry, I'll catch y'all up in just a second. All right. Then in 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression, and why is he filled with wrath? Because they didn't bow down, right? Wait, those three? No, those three, they didn't. Oh, wait, those are the same ones that didn't eat meat, right? Yeah, that's the same ones. So they're defying me now? Yeah, let's kill them. All right. So as you do, 19, he says, Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego. And he answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. Okay, level 1 is it will melt iron ore, right? That's level 1. 7 times hotter than that. That's pretty hot, right? Pretty hot. Okay, so where was I? 18, 19. Okay, yeah, usually verse 20. He commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. And these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and they were cast out into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego, fell into the midst of the furnace of the blazing fire, still tied up. Okay. All right. I want to skip down to the one that says Nebuchadnezzar's overkill. There you go, right there. All right, so this thing is heated to the maximum intensity that it can get, just as hot as it can possibly get, right? And then the prisoners, not only did they make it as hot as they could get, like he made them get fully clothed, as though like the heat wasn't going to be enough. You needed to have like flammable materials on you too, right? And then furthermore, he ties them up. And to which this next one here, this is like the most overkill ever. It's like this, trying to kill the spider by just burning the complete house down, right? But that's not actually what Nebuchadnezzar is after, right? He's after something else. Here's what Nebuchadnezzar's trying to do on this next one. It's not about killing the spider to him, it's about sending a message, right? This is the greatest movie ever made, by the way. Next to The Incredibles. That's actually the best movie ever made, right? Although the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a really good movie. Okay, all right. Let me pause for a second to just find this. So Ella's each of my kids I had 3 girls, but like between the 3 of them, I have a boy somehow in there. So like Addie is hair on fire, like everything's adventure. Meg is like, she's my philosopher, like we like to talk philosophy and things like that. And Ella's my all things comic books. In fact, she sells comic books for a living. So if you have comic books you want to sell, like she'll buy them from you. And so like we'll do a show. She's doing a show last Thursday night. She made like $700 in one night selling comic books. I mean, like she's really good at it. So anyway, okay. So that's why I always put comic books references to all my stuff. What were we talking about? Daniel 3. Okay, yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, the overkill. So that's what Nebuchadnezzar's really after. It's like he wants to send a message. I mean, like I'm not just mad. I'm real mad, right? I'm not just like I'm going to get angry at you. I'm grabbing the wooden spoon, right? It's that mad. Your parents had wooden spoons? Okay. Yeah, that's mine did too. Do you know you can use them for cooking too? It's crazy. I found that out when I was like married. Yeah, it's nuts. But so Nebuchadnezzar is like, he's so upset. And evidently fire is like a big thing for him because look in Jeremiah, I mean, because of them, a curse will be issued by all the exiles from Judah who are into Babylon saying, may the Lord make you like Zedekiah and Ahab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire. Ugh. I mean, so this is what he did. Evidently fire was his thing, right? If he was the big bad, that's the fire. That was the thing that he always used, right, to get after the people. And so this is really kind of what Nebuchadnezzar is doing. But there's something really unique about this furnace that he has. So next slide there. Probably was for smelting. This thing was, we think of furnace and we think of like a fire pit or something like that. This thing was massive. I mean, absolutely massive. And it looked like almost like you know what adobe is? It looked like this big, almost adobe like dome. Or if y'all are going skiing, right? Okay, so sometimes when you go skiing, you'll see these big round domes that like have, it's where they store gravel and stuff like that on the side of the road. And so then they'll go inside these things. And so if it's a big snowstorm, they'll go inside and that's where they keep all the gravel and they take it out and then put it on the roads or sand and put it on the roads, right? These big dome things. When you see one of those, and so you can point this out to them when you're on the trip, right? Y'all are driving, right? You aren't flying. If you're flying, you miss it. Okay, so if you're driving, you'll see it. All right, so they have these things. They're massive, right? And this is the type of thing that they would use to smelt the iron. So they would make it really, really big. Going to have a few doors for the smelting process. But here's the point that's important on this. Okay, so this huge big dome, I mean massive, probably 30, 40 feet at the top, right? All the way around. All the way up through it, at the top points, they're going to have like openings, like air vents. And then they would have openings at the bottom too. So you can put more iron and put more wood in the bottom of it, but then you have almost like a tornado effect going up through it. And so you could see from far away down into it. And so that's how they're seeing what's going on. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the type of place that they have. Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm lost on my notes here. Okay, but then what happens? Let's keep reading. All right, so in verse, where did we stop? 23. Okay, so 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste, and he said to his high officials, was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire? And they replied to the king, certainly, O king. And he said, look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the fourth is like the son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire, and he responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Like, this is the most amazing statement that could be made, because what Nebuchadnezzar is doing is he's like seeing these guys that they just survived that, and he goes, oh, wait, this Baal that I was worshiping, you can't do that, right? So he immediately acknowledges, all right, you of the Most High God, and come here. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego came out in the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on their bodies or these men, the bodies of these men, nor was the hair of their head singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Not even that. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielded up their bodies so as to not serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to rubbish, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way, even his own." Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego to prosper in the province of Babylon. All right. Who was this fourth man? This is why I give you the notes. This is something you can do later. Okay. Was it an angel? Maybe. Was it Jesus? Maybe. Right? Do we know for sure? No. I have a feeling. All right. But the reason I give you these notes is because I want you to, you can later go back and look all these up. It'd be a good Bible study for you to do this week. To look all these up and go, hey, I wonder who that was. Was it Jesus? Was it an angel? Not sure. But you have all the verses here to be able to look it up. But what I do want to do is I want to tell you a story, because really this is all about, and I know this is an odd thing to say, this is all about civil disobedience. That's what this is all about. And it seems to be like, especially today, that's the popular thing to do. Right, the popular thing. I've never done an act of civil disobedience. I've never had to. I have protested. We did this a few weeks back because we live out in the country and they're starting to build in our area, and so we participated in a protest because the area that I live, like the small houses, or the small areas are like 2 acres in a house for every 2 acres. So those are the small places. And then they're proposing to build so that they have 5 houses per acre where we are. And we're like out in the country and people love being out there, and we go nature hikes, and that's all going to go away. And so we were protesting it, but we lost 9-0. Yeah, it wasn't very good, the city council. But really, all of this is about civil disobedience, that these guys are doing this. Okay. And it's weird because, again, their attitude is, can we be civilly disobedient but still honor the Lord? Right, in doing so. Because what does Romans 13 tell us? Romans 13 is the whole chapter about obey your government. It is. The whole chapter's about it. That's one of the things that you need to do, is obey your government. And then what did Jesus even do when somebody asked him if he should pay taxes? What did he do? Anyone remember? Bonus points if you get this. Jake will buy you dinner.
Give unto Caesar what is Caesar.
Yeah. But what did he do first? What did he do before that? Yeah, so he goes, give me a coin. And he goes, whose face is on it? And it says Caesar's. He goes, all right, render to Caesar what is Caesar's. So even Jesus was like, look, I'm not anti-government, right, at all. But here's what I am. I'm opposed to anything that opposes itself to the Lord. And not just opposes itself to the Lord, but forces me to then be opposed to my own Lord. That's it. And that's a time when someone can say, look, this is a time where I go have to, look, I'm not making a big deal about it. I'm not going to try to raise up people around me, but I am going to go, I'm not bowing down to that. I'm just not doing it. That's not a thing for me, okay? And so that's when this actually happens, the act of civil disobedience. Okay, let me tell you what happens just a little bit after Daniel. Do y'all know the story of Hanukkah? Do y'all know this? Okay, Hanukkah, spin the dreidel, 7 lights, all that stuff, right? It's the vacation that we don't get to have that, well, we don't celebrate really, right? But the people are starting to more and more. Okay, here's what's happening. All right, so there's this guy named Mattathias, all right, both. And you can actually go down a little bit on the slides there. I've got a picture of him that was taken on the spot, right? No, I don't know who drew that or painted that. Anyway. So what this is, though, is this is a picture of the Maccabean revolt. And this is what led to Hanukkah. Okay, so let me tell you kind of how all this happened. So we've gone through, you've got Babylon, and then Babylon gets taken over by the Medo-Persian Empire, right? That's going to happen while Daniel's still alive. And then after that is going to come the Greek Empire, right? All right. Babylon is what? Do you remember the animal? Is say lion. It's the lion, right? And then the Medo-Persian Empire is, yes, leopard. And then you've got the Greek Empire, Anyone? Anyone? All right, y'all study this later. Okay, anyway. All right, so another animal. Well, okay, y'all haven't even gotten to that yet. How would I do that? Okay, Roman is the golden head. Y'all haven't even gotten to this part yet, right? Roman's the golden head on the statue, right? And then the silver breastplate, that's the Medo-Persian Empire. And then the chest of copper, right, or bronze, right? That's the Greek Empire. That's the next one. Okay, all right, so Alexander the Great, he's the one that kind of comes through and he decimates everybody before him, and he conquers the known world by like 23 or something crazy like that, okay? After him, he dies, and then some of his generals come up, and one of them is Antiochus, right, the fourth, and he comes up. He does this thing where he pushes all the way down into Egypt and conquers Egypt, and when he's coming back up through, he's like, Jerusalem, I might as well take them too, right? So, and when he does, finally this one guy named Mattathias, he says, that's enough. Like, I've had enough of your countries and coming down through and try to do Jerusalem and then take us over. And what really pushed him over the edge was when Antiochus IV, when he goes through Jerusalem, he goes into the temple. Now, everybody else would just conquer him, but they leave the temple alone. But Antiochus, he does it. He's like, this is enough. Like, I'm tired of these people, so I'm going to go and I'm going to desecrate their temple. And he does things like he sacrifices pigs in there, which if you have friends who are Jews, like, that's a big no-no. No swine, right? Okay, so he sacrifices pigs in there. And so this one guy in First Maccabees, there's this great example of this, and next slide there, is this, he looks to his kids because he's old, right? He's old, and he looks to his kids and he says this to them. He says, remember the deeds of the ancestors, which they did in their generations, and you will receive great honor with an everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful when tested, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness, right? That's Hebrews 11. Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and became Lord of Egypt. Phinehas, our ancestor, when he was deeply zealous, received the covenant of everlasting priesthood. Joshua, because he fulfilled the command, became a judge in Israel. Caleb, because he testified in the assembly, received an inheritance in the land. David, because he was merciful, inherited the throne of the kingdom forever. Elijah, because of great zeal for the war, was taken up into heaven. Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. Oh, wait, who's that? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abed-nego. That's the same name, right? One of them's their Babylonian name and one's their Jewish name, right? Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael believed and were saved from the flame. Daniel, because of his innocence, was delivered from the mouth of the lions. That's coming, right, in the book of Daniel, right? And so he's looking back and he goes, hey, y'all remember all those people? Because when somebody said to them, hey, worship something else, they go, no further. You're not doing this anymore. You're not going to defame our God, and you're not going to defame us. You're not doing that anymore. And they took a stand. You're going to find out Daniel's going to do it just a few chapters later, too. That he's going to come in and he's going to go, I'm not going to play y'all's games. Lord's the Lord, and I'm going to stand on that. And I'm not going to bow down and worship anything else. I'm not going to do it. All right? I'm not going to do it. And then look at this is what he says to his kids. This is right before he dies. And so observe from generation to generation that none of those who put their trust in him will lack strength, meaning in the Lord. Do not fear the words of sinners. Isn't that a great thing to say? Don't be afraid of the words of sinners. Don't be afraid of Nebuchadnezzar. Don't be afraid of any official. They're sinners. That's all they are. Don't be afraid of the words of sinners, for their splendor will turn into dung and worms. At the end, they're all going to feed the ground. Today, they will be exalted, but tomorrow they will not be found, because they will have returned to the dust and their plans will have perished. My children, be courageous and grow strong in the law, for by it you will gain honor. What he was saying is, look, there's something bigger than the people who mean you harm. And there's something bigger than all of that. And what is it to them? It's the law. He's talking about the word of God. You hang on to this, and they may try to kill you. They may do you harm. In fact, Peter's going to tell people, Later on, he's going to say, why are you surprised at the fiery ordeal that's going on around you as though something strange were happening to you? What's the strange thing that they thought it was? They were literally being set on fire in the gardens of Nero so that they could light their gardens at night. Literally being set on fire. Then Peter goes, why are you surprised at the fiery ordeal that's going on as though something strange is happening to you? We signed up for this, right? We worship the living God, and people are in violent opposition to that. And they may offer to put you in a furnace. Okay, I'm not backing down. And I'm not going to say, you know what? I'm going to be relevant. I'm going to go ahead and bow down to this because I want to stick around. I want to be a witness. They don't do that. They don't back down. They don't. Okay. Some big takeaways for today. Number one. Next slide, please. Sorry. Maybe. If it's working. There we go. Okay. Persecution serves God, right? It just does. Think about the Israelites. Well, they weren't Israelites at the time, but they were the Jews in Egypt, right? They were persecuted and they couldn't marry anybody else. And what happens when you can't marry anybody else? You become a nation, right? You don't get infected with all the gods of the foreigners because they won't let you participate with them. They won't even let you marry. You can't even hang out with them. And so through this long act of persecution, they become the nation of Israel, right? So persecution serves God, which serves the furthering of his kingdom, which in turn serves us. All right. Second, accommodator's going to accommodate, right? People who are used to backing down for the purpose of being relevant are going to do that. They're just going to try to be relevant, right? And when it's time to stand up, they're going to go, you know what, for expediency's sake, maybe we should go to the bar. You know, maybe we should, yeah, you need to leave it. That's a great picture, right? Also a photo taken in 1864, right? Accommodators are going to accommodate. They just are. And they're going to go, you know what, we need to be relevant here, guys. We need to, you know, we should go out with them, or we should go, you know what, we should go hang out bars, or like with me, with Napa. You know what, I should figure out how to drink. Like I haven't done that before. I should figure it out, right? Because I want to be relevant. Man, it's just a load. It's nothing, right? It's just wrong. It's just wrong. All right, next slide. All right. God is going to preserve Israel. And I put this last point in there because of what happened this last weekend. It just seems like everybody always wants to kill the Jew. Everybody. In fact, I had a colleague who, she was at the time I was at Baylor College of Medicine and she was at University of Texas. And we wrote together a lot. And so we would write stats papers, which were just nerdy beyond belief, right? But she's really smart. And we were talking one day, and her last name was Baretvis. And I go, what? Baretvis? Where's Baretvis from? And she goes, I forget what she said it was before, but she goes, we're Jews, right? Where I'm a Jewish family. And I go, if I could pick to be from any affiliation ever, I would totally pick the Jews. And she goes, why? Everybody wants to kill us. And I go, yeah, but you're the only one with the promise. And she goes, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? She had no idea what I was talking about. No relationship with the Lord. But she did recognize, like, everybody wants to kill the Jew, but God always protects them. Like, there's going to be missiles fired in, but God is always going to protect his chosen people. And he's always going to protect us and bring them up. This is Green, his commentary on Daniel. He says this is the deeper prophetic teaching of the fiery furnace episode. In spite of Pharaoh's attempts to drown Israel, in spite of Haman's gallows, Caesar's guillotine, Mussolini's hatred, Stalin's wholesale butchering, and Hitler's ovens, Israel lives on, moves on, and will fulfill God's ultimate aim for them. Like, they're always going to endure. God will always protect them. All right. We're out of time because I talked too long. Sorry about that. I was going to do some discussion questions, but you can do that. Maybe y'all can get together with some people at the end at some other time. Man, don't back down. Just don't. That's my parting shot to y'all. Just be different. Be annoyingly Christian. And then when somebody's life falls apart, they'll find you. They just will, because they don't want what everybody else is giving them. They just don't know it yet, right? So be that annoying one. All right, let me pray for you. Lord, thanks for this time. Thanks even more so that you give us your word and place it in our hands and you call us teacher. And so, Lord, I pray that we'll stand hard and firm. We won't bow down. We won't do it for the purpose that we have justified in our mind for being accommodating, being expedient, being relevant. Lord, help us to always back away from that specific aim in sin. That we should back down on our relationship with you to be relevant. Lord, may we always fight against that, and may we always work against it. Lord, thanks for this place. Thanks for giving us a building to meet in. Thanks for giving us a Bible to study. Thanks for giving us your word. And so, Lord, we'll ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Oh, so